This is part 10 and the completion of torts. Looking at libel versus slander. We discussed defamation last time. Looking at libel versus slander. Libel is written, printed, recorded. This includes TV broadcasts. Under libel, you get general damages. This is any that compensate the plaintiff for harm to their reputation. Slander is spoken words and gestures. Plaintiff must plead and prove either special damages or slander per se. Special damages, plaintiff must show that a third party heard the defamatory statement and acted adversely towards the plaintiff. Under slander per se, the defendant accuses plaintiff of committing a crime. This is conduct reflecting poorly on plaintiff's trade or profession, or having a loathsome disease or sexual misconduct. Under slander per se, you need not plead or prove special damages. Constitutional limitations on damages for defamation, where the plaintiff is a public official and or figure, only actual damages are allowed, and these must be proved. It's not limited to out-of-pocket expenses. This includes compensation for impairment of the plaintiff's reputation and standing in the community, personal humiliation, and mental anguish and suffering. Where the plaintiff is a private individual and it is a matter of public concern, only actual damages, unless actual malice, then punitive and presumed damages are allowed. Where the plaintiff is a private individual and it's not a matter of public concern, these are general damages, including presumed damages, without proving actual malice. Defenses to defamation or truth. Truth is an absolute defense. Constitutionally, plaintiff must prove falsity. So where it is constitutionally, such as a public figure, public official, and a private plaintiff about a matter of public concern, plaintiff must prove falsity. Under the common law, outside of those circumstances, you need not prove falsity. Statements are presumed to be false. The burden shifts to the defendant. The defendant must assert truth as a defense. Offenses of consent. They consented to the publication. Defenses also, you have absolute privilege. These are judicial and or legislative proceedings, absolutely privileged. Also, communications between a husband and a wife, and required publications such as news reporting of statements by another party. Looking at the tort of invasion of privacy, this only applies to individuals, not corporations yet. Misappropriation of the right of publicity, or intrusion upon seclusion. So invasion of privacy encompasses misappropriation of the right of publicity, intrusion upon seclusion, also placing the plaintiff in a false light, or public disclosure of private facts about the plaintiff. Looking at misappropriation of the right of publicity is the right of an individual to control the commercial use of their identity. The elements are that the defendant, without authorization, appropriates the plaintiff's likeness or identity for the defendant's advantage, commercial or otherwise. There's lack of consent, and there's injury. Looking at intrusion upon seclusion. This is an unreasonable intrusion by the defendant upon the plaintiff's private affairs, solitude, or seclusion, in a manner and or degree objectionable to a reasonable person. In regards to electronic eavesdropping and intrusion upon seclusion, eavesdropping on private conversations, not photographing a person in a public space. So where there is electronic eavesdropping on private conversations, this might be an unreasonable intrusion. However, photographing you in public is not. In regards to placing the plaintiff in a false light, this is an action. An action for false light is allowed in a minority of jurisdictions. The elements are that the defendant made public facts about the plaintiff, place the plaintiff in a false light. Such would be highly offensive to a reasonable person. Asserting false views and or actions by the plaintiff. This may encompass asserting false views and or actions by the plaintiff, such as consider saying that somebody voted for Trump after the election when they really didn't. Falsely asserting that the plaintiff was a victim of a crime or that plaintiff once lived in poverty. The tort of public disclosure of private acts under invasion of privacy. The elements are that the defendant gave publicity to a matter concerning the plaintiff's private life. The matter is of a kind that would be highly offensive, and it's not of legitimate public concern. And concluding with intentional misrepresentation, the elements are a false representation, Scienter, which is acting knowingly and or recklessness to its falsity. So false elements of intentional misrepresentation are false representation, Scienter, which means acting knowingly or with reckless disregard to its falsity, intent, causation, justifiable reliance, and damages. False representation, misrepresentation must be of a material fact, active misrepresentation, or active concealment. There's generally no duty to disclose a material fact and or opinion to the other party. However, that duty may arise when a fiduciary relationship exists between the plaintiff and the defendant, or the plaintiff is likely to be misled by the defendant's prior statement. In regards to Scienter, the defendant must have known the representation to be false or must have acted with reckless disregard to its truthfulness. Intent. In intentional misrepresentation, the defendant must have intended to induce the plaintiff to act in reliance on the misrepresentation. Causation. Intentional misrepresentation. Plaintiff must have relied on the representation, meaning the representation caused plaintiff to act or refrain from acting. In regards to justifiable reliance in intentional misrepresentation, as is plaintiff's reliance on the misrepresentation must have been justified. Now the plaintiff is under no duty to investigate the truth and or falsity of the statement. Damages for intentional misrepresentation. The plaintiff must prove actual economic loss. This is the benefit of the bargain. How much did the plaintiff lose because of the defendant's representation? And that concludes all of torts and all of our bar prep study notes from outlines. We will continue with recordings off of questions done from the MBE prep